Every mother trusts the food she feeds that her family is safe until it isn't. Could the food on your family's dinner table be making you and your children sick? Today, we're digging into the truth behind GMOs, glyphosate, and the chemical cocktail that's hidden in America's food supply with the founder of Moms Across America, Zen Honeycutt. Welcome to the Tenpenny Files, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. If it matters to your body, freedom, or your future, we talk about it here on this show. We cover a wide range of topics. We talk about something different every single day to solidify your beliefs, offer solutions, and introduce you to products that are created by our authors and our documentary filmmakers. We cover a wide range of topics, so there's something here every single day that's different. From politics and history to pets and archaeology to food, fitness, and farming. And of course, we talk about vaccines, health, and health policy. Once a week, I have a conversation with a pastor or an author who writes about faith and biblical principles. So join me here every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern at the Tenpenny Files, as we hear from people who've often been silenced, censored, or ignored, but truly have something important to say. Before we begin today's broadcast, I want to invite everyone listening to become a Tenpenny Prime member. You get exclusive content, visitations, and educational programs. Visit primemembership.drtenpenny.com, primemembership.drtenpenny.com to learn more and hopefully support our work. And one last thing, I want to thank everyone who's been following us for a while now, and also to the new listeners because we're growing every day. I'm sincerely grateful that you're here. Now, let's get started. Today's conversation is with founding executive director of the nonprofit Moms Across America, a national coalition of unstoppable moms, and with the motto Empowered Moms, Healthy Kids. Zen Honeycutt is also the author of Unstoppable, Transforming Sickness and Struggle into Triumph, Empowerment, and a Celebration of Community. The story of a mother who learns about the current state of our world's food supply, how it affects your dinner table, and how it affects your health and everyone you love. Zen, welcome to the show. I'm so grateful to have you here today. We've been trying to make this happen for a while, and it finally did. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Sherri. I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you to all your listeners and your team for the support that they give you. I really appreciate it.
Just the title of your book so defines you, Unstoppable. I mean, that is from even before I knew about you long before I knew you personally. And it's always been who you are and what you do. And in the first chapter of your book, Unstoppable, you talk about the heartbreaking stories of severe food allergies that seem to become more and more pervasive in your son. That led you to alternative medicine, then the discovery of GMOs through the work of Jeffrey Smith at the Institute for Responsible Technology, who's also a really very good friend of mine. How did you get to the conclusion, or what led you to start looking at GMOs as the culprit in your food that were making your kids sick?
Well, it's a great question. And like millions of other mothers, I was struggling with my children's allergies. I was completely baffled. I did not know why my children had up to 20 different food allergies, and my doctors didn't have any explanation for that. Neither did my mother or my friends. And some of my friends had kids that were allergic to, strawberries, pepper, mango, apples, in addition to the usual, dairy, milk, milk, eggs, wheat. Well, eventually wheat. We didn't know about wheat at that time, but many different types of allergens were going on. And I happened to see a Facebook post with Robin O'Brien talking on her TED Talk, Patriotism on a Plate. And she talked about how her kid sort of blew up like a raspberry, just like my son did, from an allergy from food. And she researched, and I believe it was from Jeffrey Smith. She learned about GMOs in the food supply. And all of us started putting two and two together and saying, wait a second, it's not our kids, it's the food. And it's not even actually really the food, it's what's been done to the food, right? Because, I mean, people have been eating, you can see in the Bible, 60 to 70% of the food that people ate during the biblical times were grains. Grains aren't actually evil, right? It's what's been done to them. They've been hybridized and they've been sprayed with glyphosate. And, we'll talk all more about what's happened with our food supply. But that's what sparked it was a post on social media and another fellow mom talking about her kids' allergies. And then I, watched that. And then I watched Genetic Roulette by Jeffrey Smith. I read a bunch of books. I went to GMO Free USA. It was community science and people sharing their personal stories that made a difference for me, much like the vaccine movement that I learned about, probably 9 years after that, or not 9 years, a couple years after that. So it was really um, other people sharing what has happened with the food supply and realizing that nobody else was going to figure this out for me. The saying goes, a worried mom does better research than the FBI. Yeah, I took that on and started doing the research and reading the science and came to that conclusion that definitely glyphosate and GMOs contributed to my son's health issues. I later on did realize that giving them vaccines was a contributing factor as well. I gave especially my oldest son almost all of the vaccines. I trusted my doctor, and of course, I'm very regretful about that. But that is what people were doing at the time, was trusting their doctors.
You know, in your unstoppable style, right out of the box, as soon as you started finding out about these terrible things they're doing to your food, you said in your book, you said this quote, I wanted to solve the problem. I wanted I wanted the problem not to happen in the first place. I wanted to transform our food supply. I mean, that is such a powerful statement for a mom to just like, grit your teeth. And you have been charging forward with that ever since.
Yes, yeah, I came to this realization that, it wasn't what I was committed to wait for somebody else to do it, right? To wait for Robin O'Brien or Jeffrey Smith or Pam Larry, who started the GMO labeling movement, to wait for somebody else to do something about it. I had the realization, wait a second, what if I said, I'm the one to transform the food industry and health in America and beyond? And I don't mean like ego, like, getting credit for it. I just mean I'm not going to wait for somebody else to do it. It's up to me. It's my job. Like Erin Brockovich says, Superman's not coming to save us, right? Superman's not coming. That's the name of her book. So I decided to take on, I would do whatever it was that I could do, to be a part of transforming the food supply. And one thing I'm willing to do is research and learn and do public speaking. I actually quite enjoy it. I love connecting with people, and I love telling stories and, of course, anecdotal and factual stories and sharing facts. And I can tell you all kinds of things about glyphosate now and GMOs for for hours. I couldn't tell you what the song was that's playing on the radio, right? Even if I've heard it 100 times. I don't know who did that, but I could tell you about glyphosate. So I took that on, and it's partially because when I took on just passing out flyers, right, for GMO labeling initiative Prop 37 in California. When I watched the movie Genetic Roulette, like with a bunch of people at Mother's Market, once I heard about it, I wanted to sort of find community. And I saw on a Facebook post that he was showing that movie. And they asked me to get involved. And so I passed out flyers at a farmer's market, even though I'd never been an activist before. I thought they wore too much patchouli and were fuss budgets, right? I just tried to avoid them. It was not cool back then to be an activist. But I passed out flyers at the farmer's market. And afterwards, at the election night, when we were going to find out whether or not we won, the leader of that area, the Orange County leader, I was living in California at the time, was acknowledging everybody who had volunteered. And I thought about what I did. I sort of assessed it. And so it was good. I passed out flyers. I'm proud of myself. And then I thought, well, hang on a second. How come I'm in the back row and she's up front as a leader? Like nothing wrong with that, but just I noticed she took on leadership. I did not. And my actions definitely would have been different if I had taken on leadership, right? You hold yourself to account, you have meetings, you organize people, there's just different actions. So I thought, well, what if I did take on leadership? Right? What would happen from now on going forward? What could I create if I said, again, I'm the one to transform the food industry? So then I thought about it. I was just in the inquiry, and I went out to the car and cried when we found out we lost, right? My whole family was with me, and my son Ben, who was 9 at the time, said, well, Mom, even Star Wars took 6 episodes. And I
Oh,
was
wow.
I was like, yeah, and they had Yoda. They had a magical being, and it took 6 episodes, apparently now 12 episodes, right, to fight the evildoers. And so I took on, well, what if it's just time for a new episode, and what if I took on leadership? And so the next day, I have another story about that, but I thought about what could I do to raise awareness with as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time. And it was a white light moment. It was really like God was dropping it in to me. It's not, I can't take credit for it. I just saw a group of moms with banners saying Moms Across America march to label GMOs in 4th of July parades. And so that's what we did. Yeah. And I put the word out, created a Facebook page and a website. And within 3 months, we had a reach on Facebook of over 300,000 a week. And we had 179 groups join into parades in 37 states and reach thousands locally and millions nationally in a single day. And went on to have 600 leaders create over 1,000 events in the next 5 years, and many more after that. So it's been incredible. It's been a movement that just has taken off. I had no intention of starting a nonprofit. I don't have training for that. I'm a former fashion designer and an entrepreneur, but I am very creative at problem solving. So that has been an asset. And I love connecting with people and raising awareness and motivating people to take action. So I feel very, very grateful and blessed to do this work.
You kind of transitioned, at least in my perception, away from a focus on GMOs and then the focus on glyphosate. Or do you still feel like they are intimately intertwined and you can't talk about one about the other? It seems like much of the conversations that you've had and the fights that you've had have been about glyphosate. Was there a transition period there, or do you still intertwine them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it definitely started off focused on GMOs, and that really was what I thought was the main culprit. And they are very problematic because they're foreign proteins, right? But what I realized along the way was that out of the 85 to 95 to 100% of our commodity crops that are GMOs, so that this is a major problem. Our entire agriculture industry almost has been co-opted by these genetically modified organisms. And out of those large quantities of commodity crops that are GMO, 80% of them are engineered to withstand glyphosate. So glyphosate is the main um, conduit of sales for these GMO seeds, right? They're selling the GMO seeds because they're engineered to withstand glyphosate. So what I put together was it would be harder to go after GMOs in a sense of like testing for them and vilifying them because they just kept saying, well, the science is not, there, it's debatable. People kept saying GMOs are going to feed the world. Like there just wasn't enough ways, weren't enough ways for me to test for them and to sort of prove that GMOs were bad. There just weren't enough studies at the time to really show that. There were a couple that were very damning, that the tumors had been formed and all of that. But I knew that glyphosate, a pesticide, could very easily be targeted as something that's not good for us because everybody knows that pesticides kill things. It's a side, just like homicide, suicide, herbicide, right? It kills things. That is the definition of what it does. So for me, it was just sort of common sense to go after glyphosate. And then to be honest with you, I thought, well, if we can get rid of this pesticide or herbicide, it's technically, an herbicide, but they call it a pesticide is because it's a category. If we can get rid of this pesticide, get it banned, because DDT and PCBs have been banned, right? Then we knock out 80% of the GMOs too, right? Because if they're genetically engineered to withstand glyphosate and all of a sudden you don't have glyphosate, then they won't be able to use those 80% of GMOs. So initially, I went after glyphosate in order to get rid of GMOs. And I asked Pam Larry at the time, is anybody else talking about glyphosate? And she's like, well, really, it's just like Jeffrey Smith and Anthony Samstel and Stephanie Seneff and Don Huber were talking about glyphosate. Howard Vliger was talking about it a little bit too, but there weren't many people talking about it. There were a few pesticide focused nonprofits like Beyond Pesticides that talked about it and Pesticide Action Network, but they focused on butterflies and bees and the impact that glyphosate had on the environment. No one else was talking about the impact of glyphosate on our children. And so I decided to take that on. And I actually created for myself to be Monsanto's worst nightmare and to, get glyphosate banned. And a lot of progress has happened. It's not banned, but it has been restricted or banned in 60 countries since we've started our work. The Monsanto campus is now gone. They've had to sell off their hangar, and they've had to sell Monsanto to Bayer, which is now a German company. Bayer bought Monsanto, and there's been over 100 and I think 60,000 lawsuits against Monsanto for the causation of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in relation to their products. So, and also we successfully petitioned Costco to remove glyphosate-based herbicides, and they did. And now they have another one back in there, which is dicot-based, which is even more toxic. So it's like playing whack-a-mole with these chemical companies. As I'm sure you're very familiar with the vaccine industry, they just keep coming and they just keep spending millions and millions of dollars to lie to the public, to manipulate our legislators, to change laws. It's relentless. But I wrote a book called Unstoppable, so I have to keep going. So, it's not something that I can just sit back and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. We have to keep going, and there is a lot of progress. So I'm glad we're doing it.
Yeah, very much so. You mentioned in passing about the testing and that you could test for pesticides, and you found out about testing for glyphosate testing and found that, your kids' levels were very, very high, and that's now available to the public, I believe. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about the testing and how people can get the test and test themselves and their families if they so choose.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on our website, Moms Across America, under resources, if you hover over that drop down, you'll see Get Testing as one of the top tools. This is there, and so you can get yourself tested, your urine tested for glyphosate. But what Moms Across America did was, when I decided to go after glyphosate, and I heard in a GMO panel where they're promoting GMOs that their biggest problem were these mom bloggers who are taking their kids off GMOs and going organic, and they're perpetrating a fraud on the American people by saying that our kids get better when they go organic, that we don't have any evidence. So I said, ding, we have to get evidence, right? Use what they're saying against them is a very common tactic by Sun Tzu, right? The Art of
Yep.
War.
Yep, yep.
So I did that and bugged a farmer friend of mine for almost a year to find a lab that would test for glyphosate, and he did. It was a friend of his that used to work at Monsanto. And so
Oh,
this
wow.
lab owner developed the glyphosate testing with Monsanto. And he had worked there for close to 30 years. So he knew what he was doing, and he helped me because he knew what Monsanto was doing, right? He knew the skeletons in their closet, and he wanted to do some good. So this is why I say never discount somebody because they have a past history with pharmaceutical companies or pesticide companies. They could be getting a position because they want to do good, right? So I try not to do that. I'm a little skeptical about the current pick right now for CDC. I have a lot of skepticism about that, but some people might be getting in a position because they want to do good. Anyway, we initiated the first glyphosate testing through him for tap water, urine, and breast milk. Found levels of glyphosate 3,000 times higher in breast milk than has been shown to cause sex hormone changes and liver and kidney damage.
Wow.
Really horrific. And then we went on to test beer and wine and orange juice. Other groups tested snacks and goldfish and Cheerios, and all kinds of things were tested. Thousands of foods now have been tested for glyphosate. Pretty much every lab in America, I'm very proud of that, is now testing for glyphosate. You can get your urine tested for glyphosate. You can support us to test more foods. We have tested school lunches, fast food, gluten-free food, Girl Scout cookies, baby formula, and most recently, military food. And not just for glyphosate, we also expanded to test for about 286 pesticides. And we're finding anywhere from 29, 27 pesticides in fast food and school lunches to 62 pesticides in military food. The highest amount
Wow.
is in our military
Wow.
food, the people that we have, you know, trusted and that who they have taken on to protect us with their lives. We're feeding them the highest amount of pesticides. And 100% of those pesticides, by the way, Sherri, are made in China. I'm very
Wow.
uncomfortable with this, that we are paying China 15 to 20 billion dollars a year to basically poison our military with, endocrine disrupting chemicals, carcinogenic chemicals, neurotoxic chemicals. So we're finding some very high levels of toxins. In fact, the lab owner said that there are more toxins in fast food and school lunches than there were nutrients.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah,
that's really
so
despicable.
really,
So then the
Mhm,
follow-up question to that
mhm.
is, if you get tested, I mean, if you test the food, you can kind of avoid the food and eat organic and grow your own food and at least migrate in that direction if you can't do a complete leap. You know, even a little bit is better. But if you get tested and you find out that the glyphosate levels in your body are really high, what do you do to eliminate it?
Well, eating organic is the first thing to do, but some organic food can be contaminated. For instance, protein powders were found to be highly contaminated with glyphosate because of fraudulent labeling, right? That the peas or the soy that's in the protein powder is usually coming from another country, and they fraudulently label it organic. So I would stay away from in my opinion, all protein powders. I haven't found one that has not tested yet,
Wow.
yeah. So, and that would be protein bars, as well. But if you eat organic whole foods, it's very unlikely it's going to be contaminated with glyphosate. Very, very low levels. Anything processed is more likely to. So you do that. You do saunas. One 20-minute sauna can equal a month's worth of detox. If you are going to do detox supplements, I recommend Cellcore. I don't get paid to say this. It's just that's one that I really trust. You can also use apple cider vinegar, kombucha, and sauerkraut in your meals every day. That has been shown to break down glyphosate into non-toxic components in the soil. And we're going to guess that it does that in our gut as well. Also, it can't hurt to have those, good fermented foods. And then also you want to have things like bentonite clay and bentonite clay and activated charcoal that are binders, chlorella, spirulina, things like that. Jump on a trampoline to cleanse out your lymph nodes, and run and walk. Go outside, sweat, run and walk, and those are things that are common, detoxing type activities you can do because we are all being exposed to glyphosate, unfortunately.
Have you done any of the testing kind of before and after? Like you get a test and then you do all the things that you just
Mhm.
mentioned, the saunas and the rebounder and all these different things, and change your diet and then do a follow-up after the fact, test a level glyphosate. Have you actually seen a difference with that?
So I personally haven't done it for myself. I know that I mean I have been tested and I don't remember what the difference was before and after, but my we did it on my son, and we found detectable levels of glyphosate in him that for a farmer, my middle son, he had autism symptoms at the time. And my doctor was telling me that he also was tested for very high levels of C. diff, gut dysbiosis, bacteria, fungus, all of that. And we went completely organic with him for 6 weeks. And we eliminated sugar because sugar feeds the bad bacteria in the gut. That glyphosate proliferates. Glyphosate kills off the beneficial gut bacteria and allows for the proliferation of the pathogenic gut bacteria, which then tell the brain to go and attack, which kills the brain neurons. And then you've got autism symptoms, right? You've got lack of eye contact and stimming, and because the brain neurons are not connecting the same way that they used to. And that's because of an overgrowth of bad gut bacteria, which is exactly what Andy Wakefield said. So we got rid of the glyphosate, restored his gut lining, and we did have to give him some antibiotics and antifungals because I didn't know better at the time, but it did work. To that extent. We also gave him probiotics, and within 6 weeks, we retested him, and his glyphosate levels were no longer detectable, and his autism symptoms were gone, and
Wow.
only came back when he was eating junk food. And it's very clear. He worked at a bakery for a little while, and he called the cookies the depression cookies. If he ate them, he knew he was going to get depressed. So we have seen in our family, that's that one instance, but other groups have tested. There was a study done in Sweden where they tested for all kinds of pesticides, and within 1 to 2 weeks, 70 to 100% of those pesticides were eliminated. There's been several studies where this has happened. So within 1 to 2 weeks, this is why I challenge people, 1 to 2 weeks, go 100% organic, including protein powders. Don't just eliminate those. And you will see significant changes in your sleep, your behavior, your potentially weight loss as well, and also in mood and learning capability. It's really remarkable. People lose rashes that go away, headaches go away. There's a lot of benefits to eating organic when you can be, really very strict about it. Because here's the thing, you can't put a teaspoon of fuel on a fire and expect the fire to go out. You've got to go 100%. It can't be just 80% or 90%. It's got to be 100% organic, and try that for 2 weeks and see how you feel.
You know, interestingly, I've had two different landscapers at my house try to convince me to use glyphosate because
Mhm.
it's the best weed killer and it's completely safe And it's only been blown up and been made into a villain by these moms across America that are claiming it has all these things. And I've confronted both of them and talked about, all the health issues and the lawsuits and the all the different things. And they're like, it doesn't exist. Both of them. And the first guy, and this happened a few years ago, he had a canister that had a diluted glyphosate in the back that he used on a spray. He used a 25% solution of the glyphosate. He said, it's so safe you can drink it. And he put it on his finger and put it in his mouth.
Oh no.
Seriously, he did. So
Oh,
it's
that's
so
terrible.
there's still a lot, even as much as you've done and all the things that have happened across America and all the things that Moms Across America has done and the power that you've done, that people still believe it's not true.
Yeah,
So
it's yeah, it's very sad. They have for 40 years now been selling this product, so they really have entrenched our society with that. I mean, even back when I was a kid, I was probably about 12 years old. My dad told me to pull out the weeds of a pond. I lived in Connecticut. We had a small pond in a summer business where guests would come. So we wanted the beach area to be clear of weeds. And I said, don't, no, Dad, just throw Roundup in there. I believed it was safe because of the commercials. And he said, no, it'll kill the frogs. And I said, no, it won't. It's safe. He said, no, absolutely not. So he was the first environmentalist that I knew. He was very smart. And I thought he was just a fuzz budget. But, yeah, I mean, they've been told this for a long time. And there are actually studies to show, quote unquote, that it was safe. But the main one that was being quoted 99% of the time was recently redacted because it was proven to be written by Monsanto, ghost written by
wow.
Monsanto. So they created fraudulent science to convince the public and the EPA to approve the license of glyphosate. This is why I keep saying it's got to be banned. It's got to be taken because the evidence that was used is has been shown to be fraudulent. I mean, they even took skin from a cadaver, baked it and cooked it, baked it and cooked it. I mean, froze it and baked it repeatedly until that skin was like leather. And then they dripped glyphosate on it and said, look, no cancer was formed. Well, of course, because the skin was like leather. It could, so they literally cooked the science to say that glyphosate does not cause cancer with skin, dermal exposure, skin exposure. And this is why you've got your Uncle Harry and Grandpa spraying glyphosate on your front driveway to keep the weeds out of your driveway and your sidewalks in their flip-flops with no protective
Exactly.
gear, and then showing up with, with cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma 5 years later. This is
Well,
a
this
problem.
is this is very much a problem, and it's so good to get this information out bigger, broader, and to more people because people just really don't believe it. So for that, I want you to just hold that thought for just a second, Zen. We're going to take a short commercial break here. Dear from the sponsors from AmericaOutloud.news. America Out Loud Radio plays the Tenpenny Files on the iHeartRadio network daily, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You can also listen anywhere in the world by going to AmericaOutloud.news and listen in their media player. And if you've listened to if you've missed some of these great conversations we've had over the last 6 months or so, and they have been really, really interesting and informating, you can find the Tenpenny Files, and you have to put the Tenpenny Files into Spotify, Pandora, Apple, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeart Virtual Studio, and on my social media platforms at Busy Dr. T on X, Rumble, Instagram, and we even have a YouTube channel now. We'll see how long that lasts. We put that up there to post all of our great shows up there that you can find them in one easy place. I think the easiest place to find them is to go to dr10penny.com, hover over the podcast tab, and there'll be a drop-down window that says all podcasts. They're all right there for you. And there's actually another tab that tells you what interviews that I've had that will be coming up for the week. We also post them on our Substack, dr10penny.substack.com, and we post our religious ones on tenpennywalkwithgod.substack.com. We've got a great message coming up from our sponsors. Sit tight. We will be right back with more from Zen Honeycutt, the author of Unstoppable, Transforming Sickness and Struggle into Triumph, Empowerment, and Celebration of Community, and more about moms across America. You won't want to miss this. We've got more to come. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Zeolite is a detox spray We work specifically with a company called Touchstone Essentials. They are an incredible company. We've been working with them now for several years. And zeolite is a mineral that goes through your body like a one-way basket. It will clean out heavy metals such as arsenic and mercury, aluminum, cadmium, and it hooks onto those metals from a one-way perspective. So once it's bound, it goes out through your urine or your stools and doesn't get redeposited in other places. Everybody needs to have a detox product in their life, and this one is so easy to use and it's so safe. You can take it when you're pregnant, you can take it when you're nursing, you can give it to little children, you can even give it to infants, and quite frankly, I give it to my dog. I actually put a little bit of the zeolite in his water because until we all stop living in a toxic world, we all need to get some of those extra toxicities out. The heavy metals, the persistent organic pollutants, the things that are floating through the air, the different things that we come in touch with in our environment. And we are a big fan of zeolite from Touchstone Essentials. We've been a big fan of their products for several years. Go to drtenpenny.com/detox to get your first bottle of zeolite spray for $50 off.
Well, only when the government bows to the people will America become great again. This is Malcolm Out Loud here. Join me in pushing back against censorship, my fellow Americans. Right at the top of AmericaOutloud.news are the words, many voices, one freedom, united in the First Amendment. Now is our time, my fellow Americans. AmericaOutloud.news, liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Today's conversation is with the founder and executive director of the nonprofit Moms Across America, Zen Honeycutt, the author of Unstoppable: Transforming Sickness and Struggle into Triumph, Empowerment, and Celebration of Community, the story of a mother who learned about the current state of our world food supply, how it affects your dinner table, and she decided to do something about it. So let me tell you a little bit more about Zen Honeycutt. She's the founding executive director of a nonprofit, Moms Across America, a national coalition of unstoppable moms with the motto, Empowered Moms, Healthy Kids, and the legislative arm of the Moms Across America movement. Among her many accomplishments, she has initiated the first glyphosate testing in America, successfully petitioned Costco to remove Roundup from their shelves, and she has supported multiple legislative initiatives to beat back glyphosate and the pesticides. Zen, thank you so much for joining me on this show today. It's been a long time coming, and I know our audience has not been disappointed to having you here. It's been great to talk with you.
Thank you, Sherri. I'm really pleased.
All the problems that we've been talking about in the first half of the show about glyphosate and pesticides, and you talk about it all the time. Tell us about what they're trying to pull off through this farm bill and the looming pesticide immunity bill, and why it's more important for Americans to get involved now than ever.
Yeah, it's so important. Right now, we've got all three branches, our judicial, executive, and legislative branches of our government have champions, which really are traitors, in my opinion, to promote pesticide immunity shield for chemical companies, meaning not just pesticides, though. We really should change it to chemical immunity shield because it would be all the chemicals covered under FIFRA that are very dangerous to human health to have immunity from lawsuits. This is particularly covers glyphosate and also paraquat, which causes Parkinson's disease. There's over 1,200 studies showing the connection to Parkinson's. There's atrazine that causes sex hormone changes and can be, possibly chemically castrating our males. It is a real dream come true for Bayer and ChemChina, that are the largest chemical companies, the largest pesticide manufacturers, to have these pesticide immunity clauses in, one is in the Supreme Court. It would be in the form of a Durnell versus Monsanto court case, which Monsanto has appealed. Monsanto is now known as Bayer. because they were bought out. And that court case, if Monsanto wins or Bayer wins, they will win immunity for chemical companies from lawsuits. And unfortunately, this administration has sent an amicus brief advising that the Supreme Court does rule in favor of Bayer. This is a
What
tragedy.
what's
Yes.
behind that? What is the impotence that the Trump administration would do something like that?
It's horrible because other administrations have not given the nod. Like the Supreme Court didn't have to take this case up, right? They only take up a few cases a year. They could have completely ignored it. But this administration sent a letter saying you should take this case up. I believe that our president is being manipulated by the chemical companies. I believe he's being either blackmailed or just hoodwinked. I don't understand what's going on, but there's enough science out there for him to know that this is a bad idea, but it's happening anyway. And I believe it's because the chemical companies want their products to continue to be sold with impunity, right? Without being sued, because they're saying they're going to go out of business if these lawsuits keep happening. And if they go out of business, then the farmers won't have glyphosate and all the other chemicals that they make. And they're saying that if they don't have these chemicals, then the farmers will go bankrupt and the American economy will collapse because so much of our economy is based on our agriculture. Now, from a business standpoint, I can understand why he might think some of those things. But from a health standpoint, and if you look at the economy of America compared to its healthcare costs, it's already collapsing. We already have a disaster. We have an epic disaster with $4.4 trillion being spent on healthcare costs. Imagine if we didn't have to spend that money anymore on healthcare costs because we weren't poisoning ourselves with glyphosate and atrazine and diquat and paraquat and 2,4-D. So, at some point you've got to look at the cost versus benefit as far as business goes here and realize that these poisons in our food supply are not worth the benefits that we're getting. There are other ways to farm called regenerative organic farming, and you've got to do that. So I really beseech the advisors around Trump to have a rethink about this whole plan. And we still have time before the midterms for them to do the right thing. But unfortunately, our EPA has done nothing about pesticides in the past year, as was promised, to reduce our exposure and especially our children's exposure to pesticides. Absolutely nothing. In fact, they've made it worse. They have approved more PFAS pesticides. They have lowered the restrictions on formaldehyde and asbestos. They've done nothing about getting fluoride out of our water. So that's from an executive branch and, the judicial branch. Legislatively, in the Farm Bill, there are several provisions that are really egregious. I mean, it's just the worst you could imagine. Section 10202, which not a lot of people are talking about, requires the EPA to coordinate with the USDA and weigh economic viability in pesticide risk and safety decisions. This embeds production economics directly into health and protection decisions, putting business before safety. Like they're saying the quiet part out loud, which they've been doing this for a long time, right? Putting business before health. Now they want to make it a law that that's what has to happen. So that's section 10202 that has to be taken out of the Farm Bill. Section 10204 extends a statutory deadline requiring the EPA to re-review all pesticides until 2031.
Wow.
This is 5 years setback of pesticide reviews. It allows unsafe chemicals to remain on the market, delaying much needed endocrine screenings for dozens of hormone disrupting chemicals. And this is because, dun, 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 glyphosate is due this year. Right? So they don't want that to happen. They want to push it back 5 years. So that section 10204 has to be taken out of the Farm Bill. It essentially neuters the EPA, right, from doing their job. And then section 10205 gives uniformity of all pesticide labeling requirements. This is the section that essentially blocks state, local, and courts' rights and effectively gives immunity for lawsuits. It even says the word courts in the Farm Bill. So this means that it overrides our judicial system and our democracy. I would say that this is unconstitutional. So would Dr. Don Huber, who's a 60-year plant pathologist. He says we have a constitutional right to sue. And this section overrides that. Section 10206 bans local governments from implementing local pesticide restrictions, meaning that hundreds of towns and cities across the country will lose protections put in place to stop glyphosate use in schools, playgrounds, and community parks. And Sherri, on our website, under action, if you hover on that, there's a drop down that says toxin free town. And that is a section which has a PDF, a download called 10 Alternatives to Roundup. That PDF has been downloaded 100,000 times off of our website. So that means people all across the country are trying to get glyphosate out of their towns, their homeowners associations, their community parks. We came up #1 for years for alternative to Roundup. And so all of that work that people have done in their parks and community playgrounds and all of that to get glyphosate out will go away if Section 10206 stays in the Farm Bill. Then Section 10207 loosens restrictions on pesticides sprayed directly into bodies of water, threatening safe drinking water by allowing excess chemical contamination. So it increases our exposure to toxic chemicals. It's absolutely insane. And then Section 10211, it does work on data collection, but it also overrides other laws, potentially weakening environmental oversight and delays overdue to toxicity reviews. So it is, it's the Farm Bill is a nightmare. And then in addition to that, and that's by the way, being voted on potentially the week of April 27th to May 1st. We don't know exactly when, but please be on the alert. Moms Across America will send out notifications. And, if you're hearing this before the pesticide rally on Monday, April 27th, please join us. That will be at 9 a.m. at the Supreme Court, 9 to 12, to show up and really send a message, not just to the Supreme Court, but the legislators on the Hill will be paying attention to this. It will be in the news, I promise you. And it will be covered by the media, and our elected officials should know that we are not voting for anybody who puts the profits of pesticide companies before the health and safety of our children and our families and hardworking Americans and farmers, right? This eliminates farmers from being able to sue for getting cancer from using agrochemicals. This is completely unjust. So if you're hearing this before April 27th, 9 a.m., please show up at the Supreme Court. And then you can lobby also with us, or advocate with us, we should say, with Moms Across America on April 28th. Sign up on Moms Across America to get our newsletter. We'll send out an invitation to sign up and lobby with us and educate our elected officials about the Farm Bill. It's very, very important. And then locally, in addition, if it's not bad enough that they're doing this federally, these pesticide companies are also pushing this statewide. So they have 12 states right now that are pushing to get pesticide immunity passed in their state, meaning if you live right now in Georgia, Nebraska, and I believe it's Kansas, you cannot sue and be a part of a class action lawsuit regarding any type of harm, cancer, any harm from agrochemicals or any chemicals. So the other states are trying to pass this as well. So what they're doing is they are either brainwashing or blackmailing our elected officials to go ahead and sponsor these bills to give them complete immunity. We don't know exactly what's happening, but for sure, democracy is being co-opted in America, and it's because of these chemical companies that are primarily Chinese-based. That's what's happening. That's a fact.
So Zen, you've been pushing this for a long time, and getting in front of legislators and educating the world, actually, not just Americans, but around the world. When you hear things like this, you can't help but falling into your conspiracy. For me, I can't help but falling into my conspiracy brain of, is this really just about money, or is this really about making people sick?
Well, when you look at the facts, here's the thing. I don't like to interpret anybody's intention because I don't like my intention interpreted. I do like to look at the facts, and the facts are that the largest pesticide manufacturer in the world is Syngenta, which was just bought by ChemChina. Their sister company is AstraZeneca, which makes 400 different pharmaceutical drugs to treat the very same symptoms that pesticides cause. So what you have there is a perfect profit circle for them of making people sick and quote unquote making people better, right, with their pharmaceutical drugs. And I brought this up when I met with actually some research and developers in Switzerland with Syngenta lead developers. And they said, oh, well, we don't do that. And then we said, yes, you do. And I told them about, AstraZeneca and so they decided to sell less glyphosate that year. The next year, they make an announcement at their shareholder meeting. They decided to sell less glyphosate, but they're still selling it, and they're still selling a lot of other pesticides that cause problems. And so there may be some people at some of these companies that don't believe what they're doing is making us sick. But it's definitely not everybody, because the science is out there, and what's happening is they're not being responsible for their impact. So even if they don't intend to make people sick by selling pesticides that have all kinds of health effects, even if they're not intending to make people sick, the fact is they are making people sick, and they're not being responsible for it. And that's where, as a mother, I'm just at enough is enough. This is a basic principle: is tell the truth, be honest, clean up your mess, be responsible, right? We know what you're doing. We've got eyes in the back of our head. We're going to keep watching you. We're going to stay on top of it. And, we're not against capitalism, right? Make what you want, sell what you want. But if it's not safe, you're going to have a tidal wave of moms coming after you. That's what's going to happen. And it's actually bad business practice to make products that are poisonous. It's a short-term business game. You know what I mean? That you're gonna either go out of business, or people are gonna find out, they're gonna sue you, which is what they're trying to stop, right? They're trying to stop all the lawsuits. Even if they stop the lawsuits, Sherri, people know that their products are causing cancer now. They're gonna stop buying them. When you stop selling your products and you can't make money, you have to change your business plan. So why not, from the very get-go, just make products that are safe? That's a viable long-term business plan. If Trump wants America to be successful, enforce that they are making products that are safe. That's all. Then you got a long-term business plan there.
It's so common sense, it's laughable.
I
You
know.
know,
Sorry, we're going to talk common sense.
I
Yes.
mean, it is so common sense to say, oh, we've got, reams of information showing how these chemicals poison people and animals. I mean, the FDA just approved a new injectable medication for dogs this week that for ticks and fleas. It's a one-time injection for the entire year that they've already seen animals die right after they get the shot. They see them go into seizures. They've seen all these things. And I learned about this on an Instagram post that was being posted by a veterinarian saying, don't let your veterinarians do this, because if you're trying to treat your dogs for fleas or ticks, it's not something that's topical that you can rub off. It's not a pill that, if it's making them sick, you can detox them and get activated charcoal and get it out of their stomach. This is a injectable product made with mRNA that is going to
Oh,
be in there for an entire year. So not only are they coming after humans to make them sick, they're coming after dogs and cats and cattle and pigs and fish. There's more than 50 vaccines that they've made for fish. So it's
it's
it's everywhere, and it's so important for us for people to rise up and say, leave our food, air, water alone. Stop
and
it.
and vaccines. I have to add in, Sherri, when we did the testing for glyphosate, I forgot to mention that I saw the ingredients in glyphosate in vaccines when somebody posted them on Facebook. They just posted the ingredients of, I think, the mRNA vaccine or something like that. I mean, the MMR vaccine, or one of them. And I thought, holy cow, there's bovine serum, there's chicken serum, there's dairy, there's sugar, there's all kinds of crops and animals that eat, animal parts that eat GMO grains sprayed with glyphosate. And I had learned that glyphosate does not wash, dry, or cook off, right, in its entirety. So I thought, holy cow, there's probably glyphosate in those vaccines. Around the same time, Stephanie Seneff said the same thing. So I got confirmation. I was like, oh, we need to test for glyphosate in vaccines. So we did. And we found glyphosate in every single one of the 5 childhood vaccines we tested. And then her partner, Anthony Samsell, they were working on papers together at the time. He tested 14 vaccines and found glyphosate in 12 of them. And both of us found the highest levels of glyphosate in the MMR vaccines. Mine was 25 times higher than the other vaccines. His was 34 times higher than the other vaccines. And that's the MMR vaccine, is the one that showed that it caused gut dysbiosis. This is what Andy Wakefield said, right? And he didn't say autism. He just said it caused gut dysbiosis, which, by the way, ends up in autism-like symptoms, right, with people. So, and that glyphosate is getting into vaccines because we believe 25% of a live virus vaccine needs to be gelatin. If it's a live virus, MMR is a live virus vaccine. The other vaccines are also grown on gelatin, right? And the gelatin comes from pigs that eat GMO grains sprayed with glyphosate. So there's your glyphosate. And then there's glyphosate gets into the blood. It gets into the, serum. It's sprayed on sugar. It's in the cow's milk. So all of those other, sprayed on peanuts, right? Peanut oil is used in vaccines. So we know now that glyphosate is in vaccines. We would guess that it's in pet vaccines as well. Moms Across America is seeking funding to expand our programs regarding pets. So if anybody knows any millionaires that care about pets, we really would like to expand our program there. We've got a lot of information, things that we want to get tested and that we want to share with the public that the current FDA or any of the manufacturers, they're just not doing it. They're not doing this work. We can do a better job than the FDA, and we will, as long as we get the funding and we're supported and continuing going on. So it's got to be exposed, the role of glyphosate in vaccines, which, by the way, also it's a chelator and it breaks through the blood-brain barriers or any other cells. So when glyphosate breaks through the blood-brain barrier and chelates and grabs that aluminum that's in vaccines on up into the brain, Dr. Christopher Exley has shown that that aluminum in particular parts of the brain has increased the risk, or he says causes autism and Alzheimer's symptoms, or straight up Alzheimer's. And so I would say it's in conjunction with glyphosate, that glyphosate is chelating and bringing that aluminum up into the brain. And more tests, need to be done to show that. But that is, I think, a major contributing factor of the autism epidemic. And you see it reversed with books like Vax versus Unvaxxed and other books that focus on Dr. Paul Thomas's studies that show that the unvaccinated children are healthier. The vaccinated children have more sickness, higher rates of all-cause mortality, higher rates of flu. Just recently was put out, right? Like more people got the flu when they got the flu shot than not, right? So it's not working.
So, Zen, we've got about 30 seconds left in our time here together today. Tell people where they can find out more information about Moms Across America and how they can get involved with stopping this farm bill. You got about 30 seconds.
Sure. You can go to momsacrossamerica.org, click on action, and go to our petitions to sign that petition. You can also go to usa.gov, look up contact my senator or representative. We really want to focus on the representatives this week, House representatives. You can also come on our Moms Connect calls on Monday nights whenever I'm not traveling. You can join us. And if you sign up for our newsletter, you will get an invitation to do that. Thank you so much for going to momsacrossamerica.org and also the Moms Across America movement, or just momsacrossamericamovement.org for the legislative branch.
Absolutely. And boy, you crammed all those words in there really quick. That was really good.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you so much for being here with us today, Zen Honeycutt, and her book Unstoppable, because she is a force to be reckoned with, and to get involved with the pesticide immunity bills. We've got to get them stopped and get people educated. So I want to thank everybody who's joined us here today. Thank you so much for being here. And we hope that you'll join us here tomorrow or the next time here on the Tenpenny Files. Goodbye and God bless everyone.